Recording. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our recall meeting for the Board of Directors of Del Vista Towers. As a reminder, please place your phones on mute so that we don't hear your conversations. You should be able to see your neighbors or participants who are on this call. Some participants have allowed the option of actually showing their pictures so you can see who they are. I will start by introducing myself so you can know who is that person at the top of the screen, which I'm not even sure who he is either, because I probably am not used to looking at myself in the mirror, thank God. But that's me, Paul Warren, waving my hand there in my kitchen. And then after me, I have JB. Would you like to? What does JB mean for those of us who are not familiar with JB?
Joanne Brizard.
Thank you, Joanne. Welcome. And then we have Margarita.
And Christopher, my husband. Move closer, Christopher. I need to see you. He's hiding. There he is.
Hello. Hi. Nice to see you. Very well. And then across from Margarita, we have Asen. Asen, we know you're there. I know you're actually dialing from work. And then we have, I'm sorry, Asen?
No, I'm good. I'm just
welcome.
I'm just at work.
Asen is in Tower 2. He's actually, he works with Baptist. I know he's calling from the hospital background. He works in IT, etc. So, and then we have across from him, we have Manuel. Manuel, either you want to introduce yourself? Manuel? All right, moving on. Manuel is probably having a cup of tea. Right below, we have Georgina. Hi, Georgina. Georgina, want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Georgina, Tower 2, school teacher. This is like being in my Zoom meetings with the kids. Like somebody answers me, so I speak to myself at times, so it's all good.
Welcome, Georgina. Thank you so much. Then we have, right next to Georgina, we have Joseph.
Hi, everyone. Georgina, is this better than Zoom, or do you like Zoom better? Go to.
I like Zoom better.
Zoom.
I like Zoom better too.
We actually have to use Teams in Broward County, which is like horrible, but that's a whole different story.
Yeah, but you know, one of the things that they've been having with Zoom though is that Zoom actually, I heard actually they increased their capacity because like they were actually having some crashing issues, and there was some problem with the participants all participating at the same time. In addition to the fact, I also heard that there was like some secure data issues that they actually had to work on. So it's good. So I'm glad. Ever since it's my opinion that with COVID-19 things will never be the same because there are things that are actually improving. Zoom is one of those platforms that prior to Zoom, from my experience, I'm more experienced with GoToMeeting from the corporate background from working at the banks. Zoom, it's always great when you have competition. It's healthy. And then basically now, GoToMeeting is like very expensive. They're not cheap, but and they are very secure across the board. But now that they're having the competition with Zoom, hey, it's about time that they drop the prices. Joseph, you had a look on your face like, yeah, it's true, right? Okay, so now that we have gone over with the introduction, if you have a copy of the agendas, a copy of the agenda was sent so you can actually follow and see what the purpose of the meeting is and where we are. We have just completed the welcome and the acknowledgement, and at this point of the agenda, we're at the overview of the purpose of the recall meeting and the cause of action for the recall. The overview basically is the expectation of what to expect from this meeting. This is not going to be the meeting in which we actually decide on the directors whom we have decided need to be recalled. This is basically the meeting of the process. This is the meeting of the steering committee in which we get ourselves organized so we can make sure that we do it correctly. That's the purpose of this meeting. At the end of this meeting, we should have a steering committee that was actually nominated from the floor, and we should have an expectation of a timeline of when should be the next meeting that we have decided to have. That will be the meeting within which the steering committee will decide to notify the board within 10 days, but not more than 60 days, that we are actually having a recall process. And the instructions are actually inside the statutes. Now, personally, I have no experience in actually doing a recall. This is like I'm reading the manual with you as we do this. It's sort of like, how do you say this? You're doing the surgery and reading a book. So we're going to learn together in this process. There are things that you will be able to input to me and advice that you will be able to offer to me that will be more helpful. And there will be persons on this steering committee that are also more knowledgeable in terms of what we need to do to make sure that we proceed correctly. Okay. Any questions about the overview? Excellent. Now, I will move on to the next thing we have on the agenda, which is the cause of action. Now, the cause of action, it's basically the initial concerns that we have identified, which generated the need for the recall. The cause of action is subject to be amended based on the feedback that we get from the owners and, of course, from the steering committees. So this is just a template. And of course, with your feedback and with the approval of the steering committee, which we will select after we have discussed the cause of action, then we can actually do an amendment as needed. Okay? Okay. All right. Now, going into the cause of action. Cause of action. Residents of Tower 1 Penthouse have been adversely affected by the dereliction of duty by the Del Vista Towers Board of Directors from or around December 4, 2016 to date in terms of the maintenance and the repair and/or replacement of the penthouse pool. As of today, the pool has not been repaired, notwithstanding this current Board of Directors receiving payments from the residents and from the owners for an amenity for which they have been paying to date. That's one of the cause for action. Another cause of action is, today, the current board has failed in its fiduciary responsibility to provide clarity about the renovation project, specifically referring to Job Order C-85, dated December 19, 2017, entered into with Capital Contractor Services. I'm referring specifically to Change Order 2.1, which resulted into an increase of $291,845, which is basically over $500,000. Upon subsequent inquiries by residents, we have discovered that there are no minutes on file that reflects who authorized the change, nor have we been given any legitimate cause for the basis of the change order, nor was the bids and contract process followed. We have in fact discovered that the bids and contract process was compromised because the bids were open before the board meeting and the bids envelope were found in the apartment of a previous director and past president of the association. Am I clear? Can you all hear me?
That was
Yeah.
for the pool, correct, Paul? Is that what you're talking about? The pool.
This last one, it's about the overall renovation. The first one was about the pool.
Okay, but the bids that were open in somebody's apartment, where was that? That's for the doors or for the pool?
The ones that were open in the apartments were for, let's see here. Those are for the pool, correct.
Wow.
Correct. Okay. Moving on. The other cause of action. And of course, we will amend the cause of action for any corrections that we need to make. This is the initial draft. As a part of the above mentioned renovation contract, the association hired William Hamilton Architect. They completed an on-site inspection on March 18, 2020, which revealed that the unit owners' fire resistance ratings that were previously approved to facilitate a 45 minutes fire escape time was changed and laminated instead with 20 minutes fire escape laminates. This is a fire hazard to the residents.
Is that like 25 minutes less than than it initially was supposed to have?
Correct. So before it was approved for 45 minutes. Instead, we were given 20 minutes. So that 20 there's a 25 minutes difference. Correct.
Wow.
So we got a substandard product and it cost us $290,000 more.
We have a substandard product, and in fact, to date, if there is a fire, God forbid, those of us who are actually elderly, sick, disabled, if there is a fire, that 20 minutes, that 25 minutes, it's a big difference. Big difference.
Who authorized and approved this?
Well, we don't know. And that's one of the reasons why we have a cause of action, because we have been attempting to get clarification from the board. Attempts have been made to have the board rectified and correct the violation, and the board and we have gotten no communication from the board in terms of acknowledging the problem, giving an update, or issuing any actions, any immediate corrective actions for the safety of the residents. Am I clear?
Well, that extra money, is that going to be another assessment, or how do we, where is that 300,000 coming from? Who's going to pay for that?
Well, excellent question. Now, that $300,000, though, that's extra monies that will be coming from our pockets, because we never mind the fact that the process was not followed, and we don't know where the money is. We don't know who authorized the change. That extra cost is a payment that we have to make, and that
comes down to about $700 a person.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, 750.
Yes.
That's about $700 a person, $750.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I have a question. Are we talking about the unit doors or the doors that are installed in the hallways?
We are referring to the doors that are on the unit, on your apartment doors. Those doors for your personal apartment doors.
Yeah, but also, is that including the doors in the hallways that are also horrible?
Well, the doors in the hallway don't have laminate. It's just paint.
Daniel, are you on?
Yeah, but they open on the halfway, and that will be a hazard when we.
Daniel,
exit.
are you on? Can you hear me?
Yeah, Paul.
Could you answer that question?
They didn't change the door, and I'm assuming they didn't touch this door, and I'm assuming they're up to code. My concern is about our front door they are installed with
Daniel,
the proper permit.
speak up loudly, Daniel. We can't hear you clearly.
No, they didn't do anything on those divider doors, but divide the corridor to two sections. They didn't touch this door. We're talking about all our 440 front door to the unit.
Right.
Okay, so to answer that question, this specifically is referring only to the apartment, the unit doors, the ones to the
All the front door to the unit, correct.
right. So if there is a fire right now, God forbid, and my door should be providing me with a 45 minutes. That's what we paid for. It's
Your
basically
door should
20
be.
minutes.
Let me explain you what's happened over here, okay? They signed the change order for almost $300,000 for a new door and they laminate the door. And we don't know if they have a permit. Right now, the door is not labeled. They are not fire door. They are not fire door.
Understood. Understood. So that's another part of the problem, that we have to do a follow up with the city of Adventura in terms of whether a permit was reissued, because the prior permit that was given was for the 45-minute, and no, but then it was changed. So whenever it changed, this change nullifies the permit that was given for the 45 minutes. Do you all follow me?
Yes. Paul, was the change order issued after the permit was pulled?
Well, just to the best of my knowledge, we don't even know if a permit was pulled, because for Daniel, you can actually clarify this with me. I know you have been working on this. We have been trying to get documentation on from the office as to whether we have permits, and you haven't got that information, have you, Daniel?
The doors do not appear to have been properly permitted. That's all you say.
The door doesn't seem like they have the proper permit for installation.
Daniel, please speak into the phone.
The door doesn't have a proper permit to be installed and laminated. If you look at the letter from the architect, they try to negotiate with the fire department to
Okay.
accept 20 minutes.
So got you, Daniel. So this is going to be one of the other causes also, that, as you can see, it's serious, it's urgent. And we will actually do an amendment on it, Joseph and Margarita, to answer your question when we as we progress. Are we together? Because
Yes.
as we will see that we'll do some streamlining so we can amend the cause of action. But at minimum, we do know. Now, just for those who are actually signing on and those who are actually listening out there, from the cause of action, there will be a repository. The repository is a Dropbox. It's a Dropbox repository. Um, Initially, I set up something with the GoToMeeting database, but I wanted it to be something that was a bit more secure. So it's going to be a Dropbox database, which I've already purchased, and within the Dropbox database, we will have all the documentations that we have. Some of them will be including financial data, etc. And the only thing that one would need to do is to submit a request to access the Dropbox database. The persons who are actually nominated and elected to be secretariat and officers, they will have administrators access of that database so that they can release the permits to you, and they can keep a track of who are the persons that are accessing these records. So just to give you an idea that yes, these, for the cause of action that we're talking about, that we do have documentations and exhibits to support the cause of action. Anything else I missed there? Anything anyone want to add? Okay. So that people can know that, the residents can know that we're not pulling these cause of actions from an intangible database or based on emotions. These are actual factual discoveries that we have actually made. Okay. Next cause of action is at the board meeting of May 2020. The current Towers Board of Directors facilitated a meeting. The meeting failed to follow Florida Statute 718 requirements, allowing residents to give their inputs, notwithstanding the fact that the association had not had an open board meeting for months. That meeting agenda was oversubscribed with the mere approval of contracts without any prior meeting to gather inputs from residents. Most notable, the board failed to follow the bids and contract process for the renewal of the cable contract. I will quote the current association president, Carl Berkins, said, "This was an approved deal. It's all already approved." After residents started to object to the terms of the contract that was renewed without taking in consideration the fact that we could have actually renewed the contract with terms that are more beneficial to the residents. This cause of action is another documentation of the board failing in its fiduciary responsibility to follow the bids and contract process and failing to take actions that are more beneficial to the benefit of the residents of the association, costing us more monies and an increase and for less service. At the same board meetings, directors voted almost maliciously to increase of the garage fees. Most notably, one director, Louise Roderick, changed her vote to reverse the defeat of the motion to approve the increase of the garage fees. Residents at that meeting protested the fact that the association has provided little or no service for the alleged fee increases. Director Louise was more concerned that we needed to approve the increase because they already allocated it in the budget. She then gave a scolding to the residents as to the costs to the association to reprocess the budget documents and mailings. Mind you, the board of directors was at fault for not following the process, for not having a meeting first, for not gathering the inputs from the residents of the association to have a discussion about the increase of the garage fees. To date, it's a mystery as to whether the motion was approved or defeated. Director Mariano was dismissive of the amount as a mere $10. From the same meeting to date, the Towers Board of Directors failed to be forthcoming about the resignation of one director. Since the board had a quorum that was on lockdown to doing its bidding, who cares about gathering additional inputs from the residents, right? The meeting was allegedly ended abruptly by Zoom, notwithstanding Zoom's prior notification that due to COVID-19, the site had amended its time limits to allow more time as needed per plan subscribed. Now, I don't know if it was that the association plan was to have opened a Zoom account as a prepaid package that limited it for 2 hours. But in my personal opinion, if that was what they did, that was also an insult and a disrespect to the association and a breach of their fiduciary duty to provide adequate time to gather the inputs from residents. Who planned to have a meeting with a prepaid package? Imagine having an appointment with your doctor and your doctor abruptly needing to end the Zoom appointment because the because the Zoom package that they subscribed to expired. I mean, what kind of story is that? It's beyond my understanding. The meet
Manuel, you're there twice.
On my election to the board of directors of the Del Vista Towers of the Del Vista Road Maintenance Board on and around February 16, 2020, I met with the previous property manager Terry and requested all contracts to which road maintenance is a party to be prepared for me to review prior to the renewal dates, so I could review them for compliance purposes as a part of my fiduciary responsibilities and to identify contracts before renewal per proper fiduciary renewal practices for managing bids on contract. To date, I've been able to complete only one contract, and that's the contract, the insurance contract, which covers property liability, workers' liability, and workers' compensation policies. Notwithstanding the fact that I've made several requests to the office for copies of the landscaping contracts, I'm yet to date to receive a copy of the signed landscaping contract from the office. Upon doing further inquiries and gathering further evidence, I discovered that the association has been making payments to the landscaper without having any current contracts on file or contracts for the previous years. Upon further inquiries, I found that we were making payments and having no invoices on file. Upon further inquiries, I found the information that was given to me by the property manager was that we have no financial records on file for the last 7 years. They vanished. When I inquired further, I discovered that the property manager was most.
Can I mention something, Paul?
Yes.
I understood that the records are available online. Is that not the case?
No. These are documents that, in fact, the contracts should be online because owners are entitled to the copies of the landscaping contracts. But those contracts they don't exist. We are required to have copies of the landscaping contracts from which we're making payments. To start with, the most recent contract was not signed. The association, they had no copies of it. We had to go back to the vendor to get a copy of the vendor's contract. The prior contract, they couldn't locate a copy of the contract. The prior contract before, there was nothing on file. The invoice, there's nothing. Nothing. Now, we are required by law to have copies of financial records for 7 years.
And that's not available online.
I'm sorry?
And that's not available online. I was told that the financial information was available online,
No,
etc.
whenever anyone tells you that's available online, have them show you. Because today,
I mean, I don't have access,
yeah.
but I've not gone online myself, but yeah.
Have them, because today.
Paul, is there any connection between the owner of this landscaping company and any previous or current board members?
So, good question. So, with the current landscaper, at one email communicating meeting that we were having amongst the directors, because that's part of the way that we kind of do things here at Del Vista. They were actually wanted to bully me to make payments, to approve the payments continuing, and I made a stop and said basically, well, I am not going to approve any further payments. If someone here wants to make the payment and another director wants to second it, fine, please go ahead and do it, but let the records show to the association member of what's going on here. After that period, there was a hold. I did my due diligence. I met with the townhouse president, Abraham, and
I'm sorry, Paul.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Salva from 1927. Can I ask you something?
Yes.
How I put the payment without any invoice? I don't understand that.
I don't know. What I can say to you was whenever we make payments, we're required to keep those invoices on file. Now, when I went back to the property manager and I requested copies of the invoices that we have actually paid out, there were none. There were no copies. I don't know.
Alex, can I ask you a question?
Concerning to me. It's very concerning.
But yeah, I'm totally concerned. But this a fact or this a guess?
It is a fact. No, there was an email that I released on the WhatsApp group, and that email actually these email communications will be a part of the depository. Our exhibits will actually confirm with the responses from the previous property manager, who was the custodial in charge of the records, that there are no records, that there are none.
Now, Paul, a quick question.
Yes.
Quick question. Any way of retrieving or asking True Cuts to come up with invoices that they may have?
So, excellent question. So, after I discovered the discrepancies, I approached legal to supervise the process of reconstructing the documents. Now, after when I did that, the remaining directors, who are all members of the current Taurus directors except for Gaddy, they lost it on me because they basically believe that I'm blowing the other proportion. All I needed was to allow them to go and redo the documents. Now, there's a problem with if you and I have made a contract and you have lost and I have lost my copy and you have your copy. Now, the exposure that the other party has that still has a copy of the contract and the one that doesn't have it, any lawyer will tell you that's a huge exposure in terms of the contract performance, because the other party can actually go and say, well, this contract says whatever, and you were not there when your wife made the contract, or your spouse or partner, so you don't know what the contract. They could even falsify the contract. So
do we know how much money has been paid out?
They wanted to use a process in which they go back and they could remake and sign and no, and I can tell you as a banker that's problematic, because I remember as a banker, when we supervised lien perfections, there were certain procedures that the lien perfection that the attorneys had when we had to like record amend a document or to record a deed. There's a certain guidance in terms of what dates do you use to make it valid. What amendment do you attach an amendment to it that says something has been lost, so the prior document is nullified, and this one, we can't just go behind the scenes and make up. And to me, that was something that it's very concerning. If they're willing to just go behind the scene and sign and reconstruct documents, what else are we capable of doing?
So, Paul,
let me ask you something, Alex.
Yes.
Was there any auditing in the past 7 years?
Excellent questions. When I mentioned audit, that I am doing my inspection as my fiduciary inspection, which every officer, you don't even need to be a president of a board or a director. As an owner, I'm doing my inspection of the records. And I'll tell you, for the records, Director Louise lost it. And again, those are in the repository that I provided to the owners. That the thought of ordering an audit it's a no-no. My hands are I can't order an audit by myself, right? And you know, and a further disturbance to me was after we have discovered so many irregularities, at no time did any other members, any other directors, right? Neither did the president of the association, Carl Perkins, neither did the treasurer, who's a treasurer of both association. Not one of these persons stood up and said, "Well, this is not proper protocol. This creates a discrepancies. We need to have this rectified today." No.
But by law,
Yes.
isn't it like, don't you have to have an audit, say once a year, twice a year? Isn't that part of the rules and regulations?
So you're correct. No, one of the discrepancies that I discovered, and that's one of the reasons why we need to have changes so we can order an wholesale audit of the association records. When I requested the financials that was provided to me that was actually audited by the auditors, this is the way these audits are actually done. The CPA firm that we hired, they did not come, they are not coming to Del Vista annually and going through the records and validating the documents. The process that they have is that the management office is actually selecting the documents and faxing it to the accountant.
But normally,
and I will tell
normally
you
an
as a
auditor
former
will
banker
sample.
that is never the best way to do an audit. If you're going,
But of course not. And of course we're paying for that audit, right?
I'm sorry?
And we're paying for that full
correct.
audit,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Normally, an auditor will have a selection. They'll select a sample that they want to audit, and then they'll audit that. They can't audit everything, but they'll sample, they'll do their audit, and if they feel like they need to look deeper, then they might do that. But
yes, but they are the one who selects the information, not the people at the office of the Vista.
I beg, say what? I beg your pardon?
They are the auditors are the one that select what information they want to look at, but not the people from the office.
Right.
Because
now we're confusing doing an audit versus the process that we have right now. It's like I really wouldn't call it an audit because it's basically we're providing the financial documents to the accountant, and the accountant put them on a spreadsheet and do the financials, and that's what's going on. Because when I asked for when I asked for a sample of statements for a specific period from the bank accounts, please provide me these bank statements for this period along with the invoices. To date, I can't get them. I cannot get them. I have been as flexible as possible. As they're like, well, there are no bank statements. I've worked in a bank for over 28 years. I know that there are bank statements. You can even get an online statement, right? Then the response came back to me that we send the information to the accountant, the printouts. So then I responded, please provide me a copy of what you send to the accountant so I can see what it is. I'm not trying to say I don't trust them, but I want to see what they're sending to the accountants to put into that audited statements. And today,
Paul, I have a question.
Yes.
Can we order or request a third-party independent auditing?
Yes, that my thought process is that we need to order what we call an outside independent audit. But in order for that to happen, the board of directors need to actually vote to approve that. As it stands right now on the road maintenance board, I don't have that quorum of majority to do that. The towers board, forget it. It's not going to happen. But that's what needs to happen. Correct.
Does it cost a lot of money to
in terms of cost, Generally, my understanding is it they will do a sample review, and depending on the sample review, then they'll tell us how complex it is. It's like it's like you going to the doctor and then they do a background of your health problems, and they order labs, and then they decide, well, Paul, you only have 1 month to live and you can pay us $1 million, or they will say, it's just a cold. So it depends, to answer that question.
And what would be the outcome if the audit discovered like violations? Who is what's gonna happen?
According to my understanding of the statute was actually amended a few years ago. The statute now has like some teeth with that has actually criminal enforcement actions, that if anyone is found committing anything that's actually that's a crime, then actions can be taken against those persons for doing anything that's untoward. Yes. Okay. So I find that to be a very serious concern. Now we're looking so much to save money. This is our money, right? So we talked about the cause of action in terms of the lack of documentations. We talk about the cause of action in terms of the not receiving the documents that I've requested for the on-site inspections that I've actually attempted to do. We have spoken about, of course, everything as usual here, subject to an amendment.
What was the outcome of your on-site inspections?
Well, the outcome of the on-site inspection, when I actually visited the office, and I will also add that document to the repository. I had to agree with the property manager that we're at the occupancy level where we should have two assistants in the office. We should possibly have one person dealing with day-to-day inquiry, one person dealing with pending whatever all the follow-up residents have, because we are a high maintenance building. We have many issues, and it's only to be fair and to be reasonable that person needs to have enough support. And then, however, at that time when I did the on-site inspection, my initial observation was that the property manager was not spending enough, or shall I say, any time interacting with the residents in the lobby. The response that was given to me was, "This is not working at Walmart," but that was my overall impact in terms of the on-site inspection. The other thing I noted from the on-site inspection, and this I had shared with the treasurer that we have today, hoping that he would actually be supportive of us taking some sort of action, was I did a prior inspection of records in 2016, and as a follow-up, whenever you request a copy of your keys or a copy of your vehicle, etc., or anything of that nature, you go to the association's office and you make the request. What I found problematic was that somebody, you need to place your phone on mute, please. What I found problematic was,
there's a loud noise.
Yeah, there we go. What I found problematic was the day-to-day cash that came in, that let's call it petty cash, because that's what they call it, it was only being handled by one person. So, and again, as someone coming from a banking background, it's not that I'm saying that the manager or the Vanessa or whatever, they're doing anything untoward. But you never want to have a situation where so much cash. Some days the cash that comes in as petty, maybe $500, maybe up to $1,000. It may be less the other day, maybe 200. You never want to have a situation where there's only one person signing off on that cash. It needs to be two. What I discovered was that the cash that came in as petty, for what, whether it was for decal, etc., or for parking permits, whatever, it was being signed off. Let's say, for example, the assistant, they would gather all the cash that came in for the end of that day. Then she would sign it, and then she would pass it on to the property manager, and then she signs it and put it in a kit, and then that's it. Now, a best practice would be that it needs to be signed off by an officer of the association, at least on a daily basis. Because just to have that person,
I don't, who signed this? Vanessa and Kel and
I can't hear you. Speak up. Sorry?
who signed the checks for whatever expenses for the petty cash?
Checks for the etiquette.
No. Who signed the checks, the everyday checks? Who are those two people?
Okay, those two people would be the persons who are in charge of signing the association's check, which would be on the tower side. That's going to be the treasurer and the president. On road maintenance, that should be myself and the treasurer. Those should be the person signing those checks. But even before you talk about signing the checks, there's a possibility that the cash that's being handled by that one person inside the office, right? We don't have a process that's actually a dual control process. So if the receptionist wants to sit there and does they want to decide that, well, today 250 500 comes in and I want to take an extra 100 and pass it on to the manager, then it can be done. And there's a problem. We're talking, this is our money. So again, I am not saying that I found anything untoward within that review, but what I found with the process was lax, and the process had no dual control. Do you follow me?
Yeah. Hey, Paul, I know we're going down to the petty cash thing, but maybe we should just try and go back to, the whole transparency thing while everybody's here.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Joseph, for bringing me back on track. Okay, so that was just to answer the question of one person here. So
Are we still on?
yes, we are still on. We are still on. 1 second. I think my go-to meeting just froze. This is weird. Okay. All right. So these are just some of the main issues in terms of this in terms of the cause of action. And as you can see from the cause of actions that I've mentioned, many of those cause of actions they lacked providing full transparency. I will open the floor to other residents who may have any questions, or any other persons who may have any suggestions in terms of an amendment. This was just an initial template of a cause. There are so many that it's after the last board meeting that we had, the one in which it was evident that residents, up to 4 or 5 residents, made several inquiries to the office, both to the association president, to the attorneys, to the management office, and no answers were provided. And we have at least 10 business days, and it was evident to everyone on that Zoom meeting that it has been way more than 10 days that these residents have been making these inquiries and no answers have been provided. In some instances, weeks, months that we're aware of, persons who have made inquiries to the association board, the president, and the attorneys, and no responses were given. Okay? So I'll at this moment I'll open the floor for any questions. I know we've already had a very interactive conversation. However, it's a part of the agenda in terms of what suggestions that you may have or what concerns that you may have. Now, as a reminder for those who joined late, as a late part of this meeting, the main part of this meeting, purpose of this meeting, it's not to decide at this point, who will be the persons or that we wish to recall, whether it's some directors or the entire board of directors. We will be having an election of a steering committee. That steering committee will have part of the responsibility to gather the inputs from you. That we will be having a repository with the tangible evidences that we have, and in addition to that, I will be having a survey monkey generated sent to each person to do a sort of rating on the directors that are there, so that we can all gather some sort of an input. Okay, I'll open the floor to other residents. Hello.
Can I speak?
Please,
Paul.
go ahead.
My pet peeve is I know that we have more questions than answers, but at this point, I decided to focus on one thing, and I made an inquiry about the compensation that we pay to our employees. My personal impression was that we are sometimes we have too many people working in this building, and maybe that's where we can a little bit, be more we can save some money. So I made an inquiry with the office, and after long delays and my repeated emails, my inquiry was forwarded to the attorney, and she was again delaying the answers. And now the final answer that I received from her, that payroll records are residents cannot have access to payroll records. However, I am consulted with the attorney, and I also studied the law that they referenced in, and it says, for the purpose of the subparagraph, the term personnel records do not include employment agreements or compensation. So, so we are essentially entitled to know the compensation that we pay to our employees. It's nothing personal. I just wanted to know how much we pay to the manager and for certain positions, and to see if we can, maybe we are too generous, maybe we can save some money. And I hit the wall.
I personally concur with you. I will tell you, as a matter of fact, that that information was provided to me before in 2016. I will share it in the repository. So, in addition to the fact that there was a Zoom conference that I had for road maintenance, and if you recall, you were actually on that Zoom conference call in which the directors, they volunteered, the very same directors, they volunteered the compensation that was paid to the employees from road maintenance. Now, I'm no lawyer, but I'll tell you that once if the association is now claiming that the payroll information is privileged, but then you had already had the directors on another association conference call disclosing that information, not only by their own voluntary means, they were disclosing that information, right? And now what has changed between 2016, when the information was provided to me? Why the discrepancies between the information that was provided on the road maintenance conference that I led, in which I have actually advocated that there shall be no obfuscation on my board? What's the difference? So you're correct, and I agree with you 100%. And that's one of the reasons why that's a reason for that's a concern, and why I believe they should be recalled.
Margarita, did you ask for payroll information or did you ask for compensation?
You know, originally, because I'm not a lawyer, I didn't know the difference. So in the beginning, in my first initial email, I asked, I want to know the salaries that are paid to the employees. I use the word salaries. And then the attorney, eventually, she tries to deflect, and she said, oh, the payroll, and she cites the law. I actually found the law, I read it, and the law says, yes, the payroll, health, insurance records, and personal information is not available. So obviously, I don't need to know the personal information, and it's not what I want to know. But the law explicitly says, for the purpose of this paragraph, the term personnel records does not include the compensation paid to an association employee. I actually went on the dictionary and I wanted to know the specific legal term of compensation. And I came up with compensation is the amount of money paid to employees in the form of the salary or wages. So I believe that we have enough.
I was just asking to just clarify whether or not you had requested payroll information, which would warrant that response. But if you ask for salary, then I don't understand why she's responding in terms of payroll. That doesn't make sense to me. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm just asking to clarify because I would think that the attorney would not respond to you with the answer for which you're not asking. You didn't ask for payroll, you asked for salary. And so you should get
and then in my eventual emails, I actually corrected myself and I said, well, I want to know compensation within the limits set by the law. And I'm still nowhere. So it's been already like 2 months.
2 months?
I will tell you the exact date. I think my first email was somewhere in beginning of May. Yeah. I have a package of emails. I printed them all out.
And what's concerning about that, Margarita, is your inquiry, it's one that's actually documented and filed. What about the other amount of inquiries that were sent to the office that have not been answered, in which the resident has not made it known, has not spoken to us about it, and it has not been responded to, or they are being told no, that they're not entitled to? That is an additional cost to the association, because now we're using the association funds to pay the attorneys to defend this position and to defend the denial, and also as the denial continues to extend, the association becomes exposed to sanctions and fees for the denial of the information.
Now, a question, Paul.
Yes.
Do you think we're going to get certification after everything is said and done? I mean, based on what's been going on in terms of the renovations.
Certification
of the building once all.
Well, Manuel, that's a very, very interesting question, because I know Daniel is actually still on, and he's an expert, and he has been relentless in following up in terms of getting the discovery. That issue alone is a major issue, because we don't know, we don't even know if we have the permits and files.
Well, this is the whole thing. What happens if we don't get certification? Let's say we don't get certification.
If we don't get the certifications and then we get an inspection, we run the risk in which the building could be condemned. And if the building is condemned, then we all need to be out of the building and staying somewhere else while we pay the cost of having the issue corrected.
Well, let's not go to the total extreme. Let's not go to the total extreme. Let's just say have to redo all the things that supposedly are not certified based on the codes accordingly.
That's an option, or do it right now versus having them complete all of what they're doing that's incorrect which is what I heard is the plan. And then they're saying they will old payments to have them redo it. So we'll have to live through another renovation.
Yeah, but there's there must be some liability down the road if you're talking about capital doing X type of work. Then what's the situation under the contracts that supposedly were signed for the materials that supposedly needed to be used for the certification of the building?
It goes back to transparency. I have the opinion that if the board, in doing their fiduciary responsibility, would be forthcoming, facilitate a meeting, and provide us with the answers that we need, provide us with the information that we need, and provide us with at least the comfort of the remedy that they're taking to resolve this problem, that would make a difference. But we have
Paul, can I have a chance to speak?
Go ahead, please.
Well, first of all, I want to say before the meeting ends, I want to thank you and I want to thank Dan Epstein for the work you've done and the research and the time you've invested, because it benefits all of us. Second of all, going to this question, if we don't get a certificate of occupancy, we could have a major problem. We have over 400 units there. In a worst case scenario, you're right. You know, we may be ordered or to evacuate. But I think rather what would happen is we would be ordered to take remedial action immediately to make sure that safety of all our residents is ensured. I consulted an engineer about this, and but it could still end up costing us, to answer my neighbor's question, a lot of money. So, but I want to thank you, and I want to thank Dan Epstein, because your unyielding efforts to get at the truth and the transparency of what's happening. And one last thing I want to tell our neighbors that are listening, we all have to get involved in making sure we move forward with this so that we have accountability, transparency, and at the end of the day, it's about our life. We are a small village. That's what we are. And we want to be safe. And I don't say it selfishly. I say it because I like my neighbors. I love my neighbors. And if things are not being done right, it's not only an aesthetic issue. It's not only about money. It's about public safety. So before it ended, I wanted to thank you, Dan Epstein, who brought me into this, and just tell all my neighbors, you know, let's stick together on this thing, because we have everything to lose and we have everything to gain if we do the right thing. I hope that answered my neighbor's question about that. We need certificates of occupancy.
Before you go, could you there was a participant that was asking, like, have they started the renovation on your pool?
No, sir. No, sir. Nothing has happened there. And you were right at the beginning when you said, you know, this has been going on for nearly 4 years. The city has been out there. They've inspected it. They told the association they needed to take measures to assure that there wasn't any catastrophic occurrences. But no, on your cause of action, I agree 100% of what you've said. And I think some listeners may say, well, that's the penthouse pool. You know what? Everything affects each of us. I don't want the first floor to be damaged. I don't want the third floor to be damaged. I don't want the seventh floor to be damaged. I want all of us to enjoy the fruits of our village.
Thank you.
Towers.
And I will add to that, Judge. It's like, it's one building, and when the penthouse is above us, if the penthouse above us is well maintained and they keep the amenities they have, that actually, it impacts the value of everyone's property here.
Actually, you know what? Above and beyond that aspect, I just think that it's only fair if you pay for services, if you pay for, you know, your pool to be repaired, you should get that. You know, not because it's going to increase, not for selfish reasons, going to increase my property values, but because that's the right thing to do.
I can't agree more with you. And I think, but everything, we're a community. We're interconnected. We're inextricably intertwined in our lifestyles. Our landscaping matters. Our parking matters. Everything matters there. If not, we are nothing. You know, this is not my individual property or your individual property.
Right.
We got to look out for each other. And you're right. We pay, and we pay a pretty penny
Yes.
to get our services. That's why I support this effort 100%. And I just wanted to say I appreciate Dan Epstein and Paul Warren taking the lead on this and going forward, fighting for information and asking for one simple thing: accountability and transparency. That's what we're asking for. And to those of you who are listening, each and every one of you have neighbors like I do. I know all of my neighbors. We need to make our neighbors aware of this. Some of them don't have the time, they don't have the ability. We need to let them know what's going on, because at the end of the day, we're all going to benefit by making this a better association.
Thank you very much, Judge. And because I think the number that we need to hit, it's 44 residents, and basically perhaps I'm just being overly optimistic, but I think it's an easy number. And I will, before I move on to the next part of the agenda room, which we open for the nominations on the floor, I wanted to address two concerns that residents have actually presented to me over the last few days as we planned these meetings. One person was concerned of the fact that it's risky. Nothing is going to change, and we run the risk of getting the same people. Well, I'll tell you this. The biggest risk that one can ever take is basically not making a decision to do anything at all. Each day, personally for myself, when I stand on my 2 feet, it's a risk that I may fall. I make that choice. I may fall. There's no guarantee that when I stand on my 2 feet, I won't fall. But I do it. I try. There's no guarantee. And if I fall, does that define failure? So should I allow the fear that if it's not successful, I won't try? Or on the other token, there are some persons who want to tell you or want to tell us that it will fail. Personally, I take offense to that. And the personal offense I take to that is, as a poor immigrant who migrated from Jamaica, I'm Jamaican, and I came from a very impoverished background. I grew up in the cane fields in Jamaica, walking with bare feet, no shoe. And I went to college. I went to university in Venezuela. I got my degree. It was very difficult. I came to the United States. I worked for over 20 years in the bank, and I started from as a loan officer, and I worked all my way up to be a regional executive, where I was making up 6 figures of over $250,000 a year at a very early age, because I put passion in it, because I believed that I could do it. And there were people behind me who were trying to tell me that, Paul, you can't do it. So I will say to the group, let no one tell you what you can do and tell you what you will fail at. Let no one tell us what we will fail at. We have the ability to make our own destinies. And if we try and we don't succeed, we can try again. Because that does not define failure. And I do believe, I know that we can do it.
Yes.
JB, you wanted to add something to that?
No, I was just saying the destiny that I'm looking for is transparency, accountability, and fiscal management, proper fiscal management. That's
so. Yeah. So we can do it, and the attempt will move forward. So please don't be intimidated by anyone that wants to tell us that this will be a failure, because that thought, at first, I'll tell you, before I digged into it, I wasn't even sure. I thought that the initial number that we needed to get the balls going was higher than 44. That's 44. If right now there are 14 of us on this call, 15. Okay, let's assume that for the 15 of us, right? If one of us talk to two persons, right? How much is that, Margarita? You're the maths expert. How much is that? Huh? We can't hear you. Margarita?
15 times 345.
Thank you. If each of us, just two persons, right? It is doable, and we are going to do it. And I take it as a challenge to them. So part of this repository process, right? The repository will be there with the evidence. I personally will be sponsoring and will be paying for the information that will be mailed out. I will be having information mailed out to residents of Del Vista within the zip code so that they can see the malicious, untoward things that were done by members of the board before, members of the board current. They can see the tangible action. We're not talking about personal issues. We're not talking about like or dislike. Like me, or whether you want to like me or not, this is about our home. This is about your money. This is about our people work so hard for their money. We work so hard for our money. So like me, this isn't a personality thing. I we may never go to have coffee, or we may do have coffee together, right? But we have one goal in common, and that goal in common is to have full transparency so that we can protect our home and make our lives better. And with
that, well, are we recalling the whole board or particular members? Because I don't know if people who live here for about 10 years, they remember that we had one recall. It was the guy called Haim, and we recalled that guy. I remember signing, if anybody remembers.
I remember Haim.
Yeah. So are we recalling every single member of the current board, or
here my thought process is I wanted to have that decision made after the steering committee is selected and the surveys are sent out, so as to make it as fair as possible, so that there's a rating system. My personal opinion, I think they should all go, because with the directors who are on the board, we have the most senior directors in terms of experience is Regina and Luis, right?
No, I didn't fuck it up.
Then we have the most current director on the board. We have Mariano, right? Mariano, I have given a grace period. I will reserve my judgment. Like you shall decide. You shall make your decision based on the tangibles that you've seen. So having said that, and the fact that Carl, as president, had the audacity to say at one meeting, when we asked him about the renewal of the failure of following the bids and contract process, and the fact that the contract popped up, the cable contract popped up for renewal and no one knew. And Carl said I couldn't believe. Carl said to everyone, well, he wasn't aware, and he wasn't in charge. Carl was on the board before. Then we had the same property manager. So that's part of the reason why we have staggered amount of directors on the board. So I find it to be rather disingenuous when they sat there and said, well, the reason why they didn't exercise their fiduciary responsibility to exercise prudence in renewing the contract for the cable contract for the association the proper way was because it popped up. That's a I'll save my
That is a very nice message. I'll read it to you.
Paul and the judge, one question. What's the standing with besides Mariano, the other director, Guillermo? Is he validated? Is he not? Because I know the president told you he did all his stuff. Is there what's going on with that?
Joseph, thank you so much for asking that question, because as you can see, dementia is already kicking in, and I forgot. There's so many causes of action.
There's no transparency. I think that's why we're all here for.
That
We went to
director,
dinner with friends.
as you
And
can all
you guys
recall, that we have
I
had
think that's
two
very small.
meetings, and
That way, you,
I
at the
haven't
end of
met
the year,
anyone personally who can tell me that they've actually met this person. They know him. I'm sorry,
involved,
Margarita, you were saying something?
what
Or
I
you
saw
were,
and, included
for
40 years. I think
Danny,
all
we can hear you. Danny, we can hear you. Mute.
Yes.
For Director Guillermo, on several occasions we asked Director Mariano, we asked Carl Perkins, we have made inquiries. What was the director status of Director Guillermo? Director Guillermo needed was to complete the director certification by February 27th. That was communicated to me in an email in my capacity as president of DRM and to Carl as president of Tower. After making several requests and inquiries as to the status, no one responded to me. I find it very misleading that there were persons making public assertion that the director Guillermo that he completed the certification, that and then if he hadn't completed the certification, it was by an act of God. It was like so many changing stories. And then I personally asked uh, President Carl Perkins the day after, has he completed the certification by February 27th? And I was very specific in asking the question. He said yes, it was completed. Right? And my specific question was when. The following day, I made one inquiry to the office, and I had to make three follow-up questions to Vanessa. When? And she kept responding to me, it was completed. At that point, I knew something, there was a red flag. And unfortunately, my experience has been in terms of the fiduciary and the custodial records and disclosing of information from the office. Whenever they obfuscate, every time I found 100% of my discoveries has led to things that were actually untoward, bad, evil, not good. So to answer your question, the document was provided. It will be a part of the repository, and it shows that he completed it after the deadline. It was completed on the 30th of March. 30th of February was I can't recall, but I know it was like instead of the 27th, it was completed the 30th. And the 30th completion, when you review the documents yourself, I won't make any further assertion of what my concerns are.
Well, it's very difficult to to communicate with Mariano, because either he will try to quiet you, or he won't respond, or will do so sarcastically. That's what I found.
I understand. Any other questions that we have before we open the floor? Thank you so much, Mia. Any other questions before we open the floor for nominations? Okay. All right. So at this moment, I'll open the floor for the nominations of the steering committee. We'll start from the top. Nominations are open for the position of chairpersons to facilitate the meetings and support the secretariat.
Paul, do we have to nominate people for the committee or for the board?
Okay, now great question. These positions are only for this is the steering committee for the recall. Now, when we're successful with the recall, my suggestions are to participants of this call, and for those who are listening to this this webcast or sometimes later or whenever, the members who are participating on these calls, the persons on this call, they are very capable, they're intelligent persons, they're willing, they're able. If you have in the back of your mind, once we successfully recall those directors, who will replace them? I'm putting it to you that these persons who are on this conference call are willing and able to fill the positions on that board. Notwithstanding the fact that we have several very intelligent neighbors, other intelligent neighbors of Del Vistas, who will happily volunteer to fill the positions. But they haven't, and they stopped trying because of skullduggery with the elections process in terms of getting a seat on the board. But
So, Paul,
Yes.
I think you should run the show. I think chairman's got your name written all over it. That's what I would nominate. So
I'm sorry?
I think you would be a great chairman to run the board, you know, and start the journey, getting this place back to normal and get transparency back to normal, just like what everybody wants.
Yeah, I actually feel the same way.
Thank you
I
so
actually
much.
feel the
Thank you
same way
so much
about
for the
Paul.
nominations, and thank you. So the process is you just need first a nomination and a second. So I think I heard Joseph, you did a first, and I think I heard, was it Asen?
Yes.
Second, okay. All right, and I accept. Thank you.
Paul, where will you start and when? And what will the process be?
Okay, so what we went over, just to go back,
Did
I
you hear me?
joined the late. What this process is a steering committee. The steering committee, after this, at the end of this meeting, we will be selecting a date in which we will have a follow-up meeting. And that follow-up meeting, we will decide when we will start the formal process to notify the board of directors of the recall process. After we have gathered, we have met together, and we have come up with a process of gathering inputs from you all as to who are the directors we want to recall, whether it's some or all. However, it's my opinion, as I've said before, they all should be recalled. Or if we don't recall everyone, we need to make sure that the board is not left with a quorum. The quorum consists of 4 directors. If the board remains with 4 directors, then they do not have to have an election. They can actually nominate the 3 directors and ignore us and move on. So my suggestion is to neuter the process, and if we're doing a recall more than the majority so that there is no quorum left, or recall
And,
all.
so basically have a team in place to replace.
I'm sorry?
Basically have a team in place to replace.
Absolutely. So food for thought. Either we recall them, because if we cannot leave, we leave 4, we be exposing ourselves to have lost everything, that they will just do whatever they want as we are.
We need to recall 4 and leave 2.
I'm sorry?
I think at least we need to recall 4 and leave 2. At least 4.
Okay. All right, we'll take all the considerations. All right. All right. Thank you so much. So
Paul, I want to nominate Dan Epstein to be on the steering committee.
okay. Is there a second? Well, all right. So the position that we're going through right now is for the position of vice chairperson.
I don't know, but I agree with Danny.
Okay. All right. So
would you second the motion then?
Okay. So can you go ahead and second the motion for Danny to be one of the second vice chairperson?
Second.
Yes. Okay.
I do.
Now, for the other chairperson position, I nominate Joseph to be one of the vice chairperson.
I do.
I second it.
I second. I third.
Okay, great. So, Joseph, do you accept?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So now we're down to we have 2 open co-secretary positions. The floor is open for nominations.
Margarita, speak up. What are you willing to take?
I don't know if the person I want to nominate will accept.
No, I mean you.
I don't know. I don't think
I believe you will do an excellent job, Margarita, and I second that nomination.
I agree.
Do
Same
you
here.
accept?
I'm like, honored, but I don't know. I'm just kind of.
Margarita, this is Alberto Millian. Except you'll do a great job.
You'll do a great job, Margarita.
I think you would too.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I accept.
Great.
We need
All right,
one more.
great.
We need one
We
more.
have a second position
Great.
open for another co-secretariat position.
Is the judge available?
No, well, the judge, because he's on the bench, it's a tricky situation in which it's best that we have him on the side as a resident, and we have his words of wisdom. So what I would like
Paul
to
is correct. I can participate as a resident, but the Judicial Ethics Advisory Committee doesn't allow me to serve on boards that will be involved in the activities, and I would love to. I've served 3 times on the board since I've lived there in 20 years, but I cannot participate as a board member. That's the only reason. When I became a judge, I resigned from the board 7 years ago, unfortunately, but it was required of me because of the canon of ethics for judges.
Right.
How about Manuel or JB? You guys want to?
Well, my thought process is, because we're benefiting from having judge's wisdom, and Judge, we thank you so much. So with that said, I'm proposing that Manuel be a co-secretary, and here is my thought process: is Manuel is bilingual. He's I believe Manuel is very fluent in Spanish, which will be helpful in terms of communicating this.
Good. I second.
Third.
I third that.
Second. Okay. So that confirms the positions. Judge, are you you give your blessings to the steering committee?
Well, I know, Judge, you'll be a great person to reference.
Judge, are you there?
I am here, and I'm with you, and I will continue to be there as a resident, present, and answer.
Not as a resident, as a reference.
As a reference, of course, I'm with you. I mean,
Not as a
I'm with you.
resident.
This is, you're my neighbors, you're my friends. I'm with you.
Thank you very much, Judge.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay, so we have actually selected the steering committee. So on the agenda that was sent to you, it shows what the questions are. The secretariat's jobs, it's going to be critical to follow the statute but to the T, because part of this process, from the researches that I've done, is, and the chairpersons and anyone is welcome to partake and help. We need all hands on deck, because if we don't follow everything to the T in terms of getting the signatures, getting the notifications out, it exists a possibility that they can actually challenge it. And if they challenge it, there's a thing in which, again, though we have the J people or the JDs, the attorneys on here, that it can be thrown out on technicalities. Like, we won, but then they was, oh, well, because, you didn't dot here. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that it's going to be very important that we provide all the support as possible to the secretariat in terms of gathering the signatures, following the procedures as needed, so that those signatures can be counted towards that 44 or 50 votes that we need. Any additional? Did I miss anything there? Anything I missed there, Judge? Again, I'm leaning on you.
No, I don't think you missed anything. I think everybody's synchronized, and we're on the right track, and we're going in the right direction. So I think that we need to take the next step and move forward.
Perfect. Thank you. So with that said, the expectations that I can tell you is that please be on the lookout that there will be another meeting. That meeting will be the meeting of the steering committees. Any resident, we will practice what we preach. So we have open transparency. Anyone can attend and to be a part of that Zoom steering committee meeting. And the steering committee meeting will be getting back to the group with the polling or survey that we have come up with in terms of the grading of the directors and the dates, because there are certain dates that we had to come up with a date in which we, after we have gotten the signatures, to notify the association within 10 days and not more than 60, all these technicalities. So as I said before, it's like we're doing this, and as we're doing this, I'm reading the manual. We're all reading the manual together.
Well, I have a question. Maybe you and the judge might know. Is it easier to put a letter out and go ahead and get 40, 50 signatures and just ask for the board that we would like for them to step away from their positions?
Before I'll tell you, when you read the statute, it's like it doesn't work that way, because it has, the statute has like specific steps. It says it has to be completed, and it has to have it
Right.
doesn't, it makes it very tedious. Go ahead, Judge.
Gotcha.
No, I agree with Paul completely, but I mean, look, I think there's nothing that prohibits you from asking the board to resign and move on. But I think Paul is absolutely legally correct. And I think that we have to be very scrupulous in setting an example from this chapter on, that we are going to do everything by the letter and by the chapter and by the spirit of the law. What I would tell my friends, my neighbors, is this. We all know our neighbors. I know my entire floor. We need to talk to them. And I know it's an inconvenience, but this is for the good of all of us. With malice towards none, this is for the good of all of us and the good for our well-being, for the future of our association. And each and every one of us knows 5, 4, 6, 7, 8 people in our association, which numbers over 400, that we can talk to. This is one of those times when we have to hang together, or we're going to hang separately.
I agree.
Thank you.
Question.
Yeah, because
excuse me.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Manuel.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Alex. Sort of to get the ball rolling, and this is sort of reiterating what Joseph made mention. What about a letter soliciting the resignation of all the board members and see what they have? I know he's laughing. And see what reaction.
I'm sorry.
I'll be quiet.
Internally, I don't know if anyone wants to answer it, but I could personally tell you I don't see that happening.
I know that. This is just I don't know if this is just putting up a red herring in front of them at this point.
Because
maybe like a nice gesture.
Last year, the year before, we had done something similarly, but then we did it softer, in which we just did a letter requesting a meeting, and there was no teeth in it, because it was, so we never got the unit owners meeting, and there was no demand in it, and we never got we got a town hall meeting that wasn't binding and in the association's records, and no one resigned. As a matter of fact, they had a meeting in which they told us off and set us straight and told us that we were very privileged, if you recall. I remember being at that meeting, and the director Louis stood and she says, we all should be very grateful, because we are very privileged. We have the privilege of having the guidance of them. And again, members of the board, it's a voluntary position. We know it's a voluntary position, and as such, it's not an enlistment. No one is enlisted. No one is forced. It's a privilege. It's a privilege when you and I get to serve our neighbors, and we want us to understand that. And if there are life events, and if there is something happens that impacts the ability of us to serve our neighbors, we can always step aside. We should never think of ourselves as indispensable, and that as the only one that can do that. That's my thought. That's my 2 cents on that. I don't know if Joseph or Margarita wanted to add anything to that, or JB.
So I just wanted to have like a plan for our next step.
Yeah. So that's going to be a meeting that after this, when we adjourn this meeting, we will actually I will actually be sending out an email to the steering committee and everyone who's a part of it that we'll be having a meeting that it's just really for the steering committee, but they can attend. So in which we plan the next step. So and it's done that way so that it's not something that just one person is doing. Is that we're getting the input of everyone, and we're getting all the ideas, and we're getting your knowledge and Manuel's knowledge and any other participants in this group who wish to attend. Any such, it's an open thing. But that's the
And
next
everybody
step.
try and bring one extra member, and then we just build and build and build, and everybody just be transparent. And I think the word is transparency.
Absolutely.
Simple.
So before I adjourn this meeting, just remember that you can advise you can still share share this information with your neighbors, because the record is going to be there. It's going to be it's saved at GoToMeeting, the same location. So if a neighbor is busy and you run into the neighbor and you, instead of like talking and going into details about what's going on, you can say, hey, listen to this meeting. And this will kind of catch up to speed on what's going on at Del Vista and why it's important. And then give me a call later. Follow?
Paul, before you sign off, and before we adjourn, I think we've adjourned. I want to thank everybody, especially you and Dan Epstein. But I also want to tell my neighbors, I want to give you my personal email. It's A as in alpha, TTYMILIAN. I'll repeat it, ATTYMILIAN @AOL.com. We need to develop interconnected method of communicating with each other and sharing information with each other.
I couldn't write it down.
Now, I have a quick, I'm sorry to interrupt the Judge, but I think, Paul, I don't know if it's a good idea to get all the emails of all the residents and get out a letter indicating what's the next upcoming meeting.
Yes.
So perhaps we can get more people on board.
Paul, let me repeat that. ATTYMILIAN @AOL.com. I share everything with Paul and Dan Epstein. And if everybody has it, I'll repeat it a third time. ATTYMILIAN @AOL.com. And I will give you my cell phone so we can all be interconnected. 786-374-8484. 786-374-8484. If I don't answer you, it's because I'm in court or unavailable. But other than that, let's be interconnected. I mean, that's one of the advantages that we have. You want me to repeat anything?
Huh?
Judge,
Email
please repeat it. Go ahead.
Your email, once again, I'm sorry.
All right, I'll repeat it again. A as in alpha, T as in tango, T as in tango, Y as in Yankee, MILIAN. My last name, ATTY Million @AOL.com. And my cell number is 786-374-8484. 786-374-8484. Let's stay in touch. Let's share information. And, once we start communicating, and Paul will be the coordinator, we will all be in touch with each other. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to participate. But again, I think it's a noble cause. It's our community. It's our home. It's our neighborhood.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So much.
At the end of the day, it's your money.
Thank you.
And thank you so much,
that,
Paul.
Thank you.
Paul,
Okay. Any other acknowledgement before we adjourn the meeting?
Thank you very much, Paul.
All right. Thank you
No,
all
Paul, I think
very much.
I think it's very good that we communicate, and thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you
Have
all.
a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.